So let's do a quick review of the answers to the quiz here, because some of them probably didn't seem like they might have been very intuitive. Number one was the presence of an accent is an indicator of an individual's level of proficiency in English, right? The thicker the accent, less proficient they are. And that's absolutely false. Accent is not an indicator of proficiency, but only a marker regarding when an individual first began to hear and learn the language. When you're young, before the age of about 11, you have no problem picking up the phonemes properly if you hear them properly. As you get older, it becomes a little bit more difficult to do, which is why accent tends to develop. And it gets heavier or thicker the older that we tend to be. Okay? But not an indicator of proficiency. Number two, children don't learn languages faster and better. Yes, they will have the advantage of pronunciation. Yes, they will have the advantage of immersion. They're very frequently using language actively and immersed in a situation in which they have to learn it. But because adults have CALP and because they can use the common underlying proficiency in the process of linguistic transfer, they actually can learn a language better and faster than children. They just may not sound like it because the accent won't be as good and everybody will think they're not as fluent when in fact they really are. Number three, a child can eventually catch up to monolingual English-speaking peers simply by increasing the amount of language a child hears daily. Well, no. That would mean that we would have to stop the children who are monolingual English speakers from having as much English as they're getting, because they're going to get the same amount of English no matter what. We could give children who are English learners, multilingual learners, as much English as we possibly could in a single day, 24/7 even, but that doesn't change the fact that monolinguals are getting the same. So it's impossible to try to catch up that way. We have to do different things, particularly by developing the heritage language to CALP level and allowing the cognitive underlying proficiency to permit the transfer there. Learning two languages doesn't cause any kind of linguistic confusion. Children tend to generalize rules and they play with those rules. I once thought, can you say something like, the house red in English rather than the red house? The adjective usually precedes the noun, but in Spanish, the adjective follows the noun, la casa roja. So I tried that and I found out my parents told me, no, you can't say it that way. And my teacher told me, no, you can't write it that way. So I realized, okay, there are different rules in English and in Spanish. That's not confusion. That's just really pushing the limits to figure out what's what. Learning two languages doesn't lead to poor academic performance. Actually, learning two languages and learning both of them well and becoming bilingual, biliterate means that you're very likely to outperform monolingual English-speaking peers. It has an academic enhancement when you learn two languages really, really well. And finally, code switching is not an example of any type of language disorder or poor grammatical ability. People code switch because they can and when they want to. It's something that they do because the expression of what they're trying to say comes out better, sometimes in one language than the other. Sometimes they need to pull that one word because they don't know it in the other language. But the other person they're talking to also knows both languages and it isn't a problem. It's a common form of communication, not poor grammatical ability. It is not something that we should be concerned with. And those are the answers.